We make things. We use our hands, minds, and machines to build, to fix, to improve. We're known as do-it-yourselfers, home improvement fans, fix-it fanatics, inventors. At our core, though, we're all makers. So let's jump in and make something. Hi, I'm Ron Hazelton. Welcome to the show. You know, the cost to heat and cool our homes is headed in only one direction, straight up. We're all familiar with the general recommendations when it comes to conserving energy and lowering utility bills. But the truth is, every house is different. That's why many utility companies have come up with energy audits, a low-cost, sometimes no-cost way to detect energy losses in your home. Today, I'll show you just how these are done. Wooden tables take a lot of wear and tear and can end up looking pretty sad. However, it's not that difficult to give them new life with a finish that's good-looking, water-resistant, and durable. Stay tuned, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Now more than ever, cutting energy bills at home makes good sense. In a typical home, 50 to 60% of the energy used goes for heating, cooling, and lighting, and often, much of that is wasted. Well, local utility companies, like the one here in Connecticut where I live, are trying to change that by offering homeowners home energy audits to help them find out where that energy is being lost and what to do about it. Chris Ellert, the manager of residential energy services for the United Illuminating Company, or UI, explains why.
UI provides programs like Home Energy Solutions, funded through the Connecticut Energy Efficiency Fund, to help consumers lower their energy costs.
One of the key parts of these audits is the blower door test. First, this insert is placed in the door opening and snapped into position. Then, a blower is installed in the insert and sealed in place. Finally, a control box gets mounted on the frame. Next, the furnace is turned off, exterior doors are closed, fireplace dampers are put down, heating and cooling systems and exhaust fans are switched off, and windows are closed and latched. When the fan is started, it begins to pull air from inside the home, lowering the interior pressure and creating a vacuum. A smoke wand is then used to detect air leaks from light fixtures, fireplace dampers, windows, doors, electrical outlets on exterior walls, and gaps around heating and cooling ducts. Once the leaks are detected, they can be reduced or eliminated. Ductwork, for example, is reattached where it's loose and then sealed to the surrounding opening using foil tape. As part of the service, technicians who perform energy audits for the United Illuminating Company use an expanding foam to seal around pipes that penetrate basement ceilings and attic floors. In addition, the technicians fill any gaps or openings that could allow air to leak through. They also install foam gaskets on electrical outlets and switches located in exterior walls. Audit technicians may also install other energy-saving measures, such as door sweeps and weather stripping, and may even apply interior caulk. They will also advise homeowners on how and where to apply exterior caulk and how to adjust door thresholds for a tight seal. Another important part of a home energy audit is something known as the duct blaster test. For this diagnostic, a fitting is taped to a return register and all supply vents are sealed. A section of flexible duct with an attached fan is connected to the fitting. When the fan is turned on, the home's duct system is pressurized. Any escaping air is detected using the smoke wand. These leaks, such as this joint, are then eliminated by applying a quick-drying sealant. A typical energy audit by UI and the Connecticut Energy Efficiency Fund includes an inspection of existing attic insulation. If more is required, be sure to use the type without the paper vapor barrier. Lay it in the same direction as the existing insulation until you reach the top of the joists. Then run it perpendicular to the material underneath. Also, doors and hatchways in attics that are not heated or cooled can be made more energy efficient by adding rigid insulation to the back side. Some energy leaks, such as those through exterior walls, can best be detected using an infrared camera. Walls that fail this test can be made more energy efficient by adding blown-in insulation. 20% of the energy used in the average home is for lighting. Replacing incandescent bulbs with compact fluorescents can cut lighting costs by up to 75%. What's more, newer compact fluorescents come in a variety of styles and shapes that closely resemble their incandescent predecessors. The Connecticut Energy Efficiency Fund program, like many others, includes some bulb replacement.
I decided to put the compact fluorescent lights to a test myself. Now here are 12 standard incandescent lights. As you can see, they're drawing 636 watts. Now I'll replace the incandescent bulbs with the same number of compact fluorescents. These compact fluorescents are putting out the same amount of light as the incandescent bulbs, but consuming only 1/4 as much power, 160 watts.
When we look at washers and dryers, we're really focusing in on the washing machine. The traditional washer uses 50 gallons of water to wash one load of clothing. If you were to upgrade into an Energy Star model, you reduce your water usage by 50%. Through our program, we do offer consumers rebates to encourage them to replace their old inefficient models to Energy Star models. If they act within 45 days of our visit, we'll actually double those rebates, so you can receive up to $300 in appliance rebates through the program.
Technicians will also install pipe insulation and point out other ways for homeowners to save energy by explaining, for example, how to clean refrigerator coils, replace central heating and air conditioning filters, and clean the filters on window units. The program also provides the homeowner with their own watt meter, so they can check for other energy hogs around the house.
The cost of the Connecticut Utilities version of the home energy audit? Well, about $75. Not a bad investment when you also consider
there's also federal tax credits available to consumers who upgrade heating systems, your central air conditioning, insulation, windows, doors, even getting into vinyl siding. There's federal tax credits for vinyl siding as well. And there are many states throughout the country that offer similar home assessment programs, and I would encourage folks to check with their local utility for such programs.
Today I'm answering an SOS from my neighbor Christine, who has given up on her kitchen table because she considers it, well, beyond help. I'm going to have a look.
Hey, good morning, Christine.
Hey, Ron. Good to see you.
Hey, Oliver. How you doing, buddy? So this is the table,
This is it.
Oh, wow. This is the table that gets all the use, right?
You bet.
Constantly, yeah. You know what I think happened here is I think the original finish on here was on the thin side. And what's happened with all the cleaning and just time and plates being dragged across this, that finish is just plain worn off. In fact, it's worn so much that even the color underneath the stain is gone in some places. So we're looking pretty much at bare wood right here. So what I want to do is kind of take this back to how it looked when it was new.
That would be great.
But the finish I'm going to put on here is going to be a lot tougher. It's going to hold up to the kind of use a kitchen table gets, all right?
That's what we need.
Now this job is one I prefer to do in my shop, so I'm taking the top of the table back with me.
Now the first thing I'm going to want to do is remove what's left of this finish on here. And I'll be using a paint stripper. This is a thick paste brushable type.
Okay, now I'm going to be applying this to the tabletop with a fairly wide, natural bristle, disposable brush. Now the whole idea when I'm working with stripper here is I don't want to overbrush it. I want just enough to spread this out because the chemicals in the stripper that do the work are gases. And if the more I brush this, the more they escape into the air, the less are left behind to do their job, which is to loosen the paint up. So just enough brushing to lay it on the surface like this. Now the whole idea with stripper is to let the chemical do the work. So I want to give this just a few minutes, and if you look at the surface here, you'll begin to see that the finish is actually bubbling up. It's lifting itself from the wood underneath, and that's what we want to be looking for. Now to lift that old finish off the surface, I'm going to use a wide putty knife. I'm going to make one modification to this tool first though, and that is I want to round off the corners here so that they wouldn't dig into the surface.
By holding the putty knife at a shallow angle and applying moderate pressure as I move across the surface, I can remove nearly all the old finish in one pass. A small box makes a good receptacle and gives me an easy way to clean my putty knife. I'm applying the stripper to smaller sections at a time to prevent it from drying out and allowing the finish to become hard again. Now I've opened the shop doors and have plenty of cross ventilation while I use these chemicals. Medium coarse steel wool does a good job of removing the old finish from the rounded table edge.
Now that paste stripper took off most of the finish. There's a little bit of residue here though. So I'm going to go over it a second time, only this time I'm going to be using a liquid stripper.
I apply the liquid stripper liberally with a brush. It flows into the wood grain, loosening the old finish there, and softens anything left behind by the paste. Medium fine steel wool helps dislodge any stubborn remnants and lift them from the surface. To prevent scratches, it's important to make long, straight passes in the direction of the wood grain.
Well, I'd say all of that finish is off, but I am going to go one more step here. I don't always do this, but most of the time I like to. These strippers have waxes in them, and this last step is a wash with lacquer thinner. And the idea here is to wash off any of that wax that's been left behind.
Again, I brush on the lacquer thinner, then use fine steel wool for this final cleaning. Now it's time for a little sanding, and I do mean little. This tabletop is oak veneer, probably only a 1/16 of an inch thick or less. I'm using a finishing sander with 220 grit sandpaper.
Well, the table is stripped, sanded, and clean. Now it's time to put some color back or stain it. Now remember, I'm only doing the top of this table, so I've got to get this color to be a pretty close match to the base. What I've done is taken a couple of colors here, Special Walnut and Ipswich Pine, and I've put samples of each on this board right here. Well, let's see how this looks. I'd say the Special Walnut right here is a little bit dark, and the Ipswich Pine might be just a shade light. But I bet if I intermix these two, I can get pretty close.
The Special Walnut will be my base color. To lighten it just a bit, I'm using a baby syringe to add a small amount of the pine stain.
Now you can apply stain with a rag or a brush. I kind of prefer a brush. I like to put it on fairly wet and then wipe it off with a cloth or a paper towel.
Here too, I work in the same direction as the grain, wiping in long, even, straight strokes.
Well, the color's restored. I'm going to let this dry now for at least 24 hours, and then I'll come back and put a clear top coat on. You know, in just about any refinishing or painting job, preparation is the most important part of the project. And I think we've done a pretty good job of preparing this here. It looks fantastic. Now, I'm about ready to start putting on the clear top coating. This is a polyurethane, and you notice that I'm stirring it here. You may wonder, well, why is he stirring it? It's a clear material. Well, this is actually a semi-gloss polyurethane, and the reason I'm stirring it is that the flattening agent can settle to the bottom of the can. So what I want to do is pick it up and redistribute it throughout the liquid here.
I give the table a final dusting to remove anything that might have settled onto the surface.
Now this is an oil-based material, so I'm going to be using a natural bristle brush. And you know, I don't skimp on my brushes on a job like this. I want to make sure that I'm using the best brush I can find for a couple of reasons. It's going to lay a much smoother finish, and the likelihood of me dropping bristles out and leaving them in the coating is going to be very small.
Rather than work directly from the can, I like to pour the finish into a clean container. Then load the brush by dipping it in and gently slapping it on the sides to remove any excess material. I'm using a satin polyurethane that will enhance the wood grain, give a soft sheen, and most importantly, provide a tough, durable surface that will stand up to spilled liquids and scuffing. In this case, I'll apply 3 coats and sand lightly in between. The final coat is thoroughly dry, and I'm now applying paste finishing wax with a pad of 4/0 steel wool. Now doing this eliminates any minor surface imperfections and gives the tabletop a smooth, almost velvety feel. I let the wax dry for a few minutes, then buff it with a soft cloth. Well, it's time to put this piece of furniture back into service.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Wow! It's like a new table.
Turned out nice, isn't it?
It's gorgeous.
You know, it actually is in a way better than a new table because the finish that I put on here is really tough.
It has to be. Okay, nobody can eat on this.
Okay? No. I want to show you something, okay? I've got 3 coats of polyurethane on here. It'll take just about anything. And so to demonstrate, watch this.
Watch, Oliver.
You see how that water beads completely up on the surface? So any kind of spill like that, you just take a cloth.
Watch.
And wipe it up. I put a coat of wax on here, maybe like twice a year. I'll give you some. You know, put a little more wax on it.
Okay.
And that's really all you're going to have to do to care for this. It's really, so use it. What I'm saying is
Ron,
it looks
this is
nice, it's pretty,
wonderful.
but use it.
Well, you can't have milk without brownies. Made these fresh for you this morning.
Ooh-wee. Hey, you know what?
Thank you for my new table.
You're very welcome. I'll do a table anytime for fresh brownies.
That's a
Do
deal.
we have one?
That's a deal.
Oh!
Oh!
Oh! You know, but from now on, you won't have to cry over spilled milk.
Sometimes we can really be surprised at the beauty that's lying just beneath the surface. That's certainly the case here.
Now how about this for a great way to store dowels and short pieces of small molding? This is just different lengths of plain old downspout. The plastic variety seems to work best. And these are downspout brackets. Use them to attach it to the wall or to your workbench. And for the shorter sections right here, just cut a small wooden block and put it right in the end. Well now, there's no excuse for not finding exactly the right piece of material when you need it.
To view today's projects again and countless more, go to HouseCallsDIY.com. Step-by-step home improvement tips when you need them.
I'm Brian Kelsey. Welcome to House Calls.
Join us as we tackle some great home projects, as well as look back at favorites from Ron Hazelton on House Calls.